Hey everybody, Strangers103 here, obviously. This is mostly going to be a talk about CVs and the decision by Wargaming, as painful as it may have been, to not include CVs in a 7 vs 7 tier turn competitive format. In the background, you're seeing me playing against, well, it's a competitive training match. That's why we have a black swan there. It's the old, this is from quite a while back. But I randomly found, came across this replay. Well, I did come across this replay by, okay, I can't select place. I came across it by random sheer luck, actually. But I think this is a really good replay to illustrate some of the points I'm going to bring up throughout this video. Now, I'm not going to talk as much about the background video, well, the game you see in the background as much as I might like. I mean, I'm not here to comment so much about that. But, starting off this game, let's just get a few things out of the way about this game. We're playing against MDivX. Duh. MDiv, you can see it there in their names, you know. But, first of all, no offense to our opponent, but one of the things I'm going to talk about is carrier skill gap. And let's just make it completely clear. You'll see it throughout the game as well. In this game, I play quite a bit better than my opponent, if I say so myself. But, yeah, anyways, let's get this game started. First of all, what's the role of a carrier in a competitive game? Now, from a field commander point of view myself, and I'm sure some of you guys watching might know who I play for and who I lead for, but in my opinion, the biggest role of the CV, at least in the early game we see now, is information. And, well, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm obtaining information. We see where the Kutusov's going, we see where the Armageddon's going, we see the Chapayev moving towards the west, Alabama and Benson heading towards B. So that's already given us quite a lot of information. We know that the Charlie group is probably going to be the weaker side, and if you check it out, they've got double Armageddon, but their Alabama's heading towards middle with the Chapayev and Benson area, so they probably have another Kutusov in the area to smoke up the Chapayev, unless he wants to go to A. And all of a sudden, bam, that's information. And there we go, we spot the last Armageddon on the western side of the map. CVs are not so much about the damage, and obviously everyone can spec anti-aircraft, and you'll be just fine against CVs. Let's face it, no Armageddon really specs full AA, because, let's face it, it's kind of silly, because the Armageddon is there about being able to get down the flanks and cause massive harassment against surface. So here we have it. That's the surface to air and the air to surface interaction, if you want. I'm interacting with my surface opponent and my surface allies by basically not doing much, really. I'm never going to get to do heavy, critical, devastating damage to someone unless they literally allow me to. And if they do allow me to, well, they allowed me to. If they're not specing anti-aircraft, it's a choice of theirs, is it not? But yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about, well, of course, Tier 8 competitive meta and the Tier 8 9 vs 9 meta compared to Tier 8 7 vs 7. Now back in the old days, if you want, with the old 7 vs 7, before any real meta was developed, before, Kutusovs were used and all, but the old meta was a little bit different. You had a lot more of the pushy kind of gameplay where people would aggressively move up on a flank or something, for example. Whereas now it's a lot more passive. And of course it's going to be passive. IFHE Kutusov's a thing. It's not where the Altago used to have this major pushing power. And you'll see it on the map if you pay attention to our Kutusov Armageddon I just looked at earlier on the eastern side of the map. Combined with the Benson, they can sit there permanently smoke the entire goddamn game if they want. Like, I'm not even kidding. So, what's the opponent without a permanent smoke ability? You can see their Armageddon Kutusov up there. What are they going to be able to achieve on that side of the map if they don't have a permanent smoke? I mean, they're just going to get pushed away, they're going to bleed more health, and they can't sustain that kind of a fight. I mean, check that out. Our Armageddon's, our Kutusov's are full HP, our Armageddon's not bleeding, so... and if we're able to deal damage to their battleships, they're being pushed away. So, well, with spotting being the most critical part of a carrier's job, you're both spotting enemy aircraft, you're spotting their surface ships, and you're spotting their destroyer torpedoes, of which I'm not really doing too much of right now, just circling my planes around the area. Well, how do you counter this then? Well, you move your anti-aircraft up. you see here, we've moved a Kutusov kind of up on the C side, so the Charlie side is basically mine to play with. If we have a look at this mouse cursor, this is basically kind of where I can safely fly my aircraft without being harassed. If I fly too much there, anti-air, fly too much towards this island, it's going to be anti-air. So this kind of is a safe area where I can't really necessarily spot stuff. And if fleets start suddenly getting on top of each other, then I'm not really going to be able to do much about it. As you can see, I'm starting to fly towards the cruiser group over there, and now, well, and there you go, the Benson smoke screen's up, so you can see their cruisers are definitely going to start moving up over there, so I don't want to keep that fighter around too long. And you can see I'm now spotting the Benson. But if you look at the map, it's 5 minutes into the game, and there aren't really that many points being earned yet. The enemy is finally probably going to get their first cap. I'm not going to fly into Bravo to spot that, because no one's really in a position to reset that. Even North Carolina pretty far back on the Bravo side, but he's kind of just, you know, he's being an anchor. He can be moved into any position later on if need be. And we have a friendly North Carolina on the west, again just to anchor that up and prevent the enemy from getting in. Now the enemy carrier is spotting our Benson, and their Benson has now gone into the Alpha cap, so, well, we're going to have to eventually find a way to deal with that. But even if I spot the Benson right now, there really isn't much of a point. I mean, sure, carriers can keep destroyers permanently spotted. That doesn't matter if no one's there to shoot them. If this Benson just parks himself behind the island, like our Benson was, then, well, no one's really getting to do much about it. Now, a tier 10 with 7 versus 7, the biggest issue I have with tier 10 in its own is the simple fact that everything has a lot more range. You know, cruisers are running 20-something kilometer range, battleships have over 20 kilometer something range, everything is over 20 kilometer something range, so you're kind of ending up in this situation where pretty much everyone, if you want, is, you know, if you can sit at 20 kilometers and spamming at people, you know, why should you really get too much closer to stuff if you can just sit there and merrily go ham? You know, if there's no real reason to get closer. So with that, the maps themselves and the points income itself needs to be properly balanced in a way to, how can I put it, promote people to move up. But then we have the issue of, well, if you have no carrier and you're being forced to move up, you know, let's say for example, we pushed our Kutusov, Amagi, and Benson group on this side down, and they had a Kutusov, Amagi, so, you know, if we push down and they push into us, because they have to, because point income is so high, and of course, if you saw the maps, they don't look like this at all. But the point is, that and that, with the old smokescreen Mater, of course, would probably just have been annihilated. This is now sitting behind, we win. Whereas, if this had pushed through, again, you know, if this guy had been over here or in the middle, and this had pushed through and killed that, you know, chances are we would have killed that and won. And then this is just left there alone. Or we push through B and C, kill this, and that's alone. Of course, if our opponent are also placed under the same rules, they're not going to do the same things either. They're going to obviously play completely different. But the point in case being, if there's no such thing as a cruiser scout plane, I can't, like, as a cruiser, launch my plane and tell it, alright, fly north. I want fly in this direction and spot for me. As long as I can't do that, as long as that's not an option, then, well, there's no spotting. And if there's no spotting, then there's no ability for a team, or a field commander, or anyone to know how to deploy their fleet efficiently. And this is basically introducing an element of luck. Now, we've managed to actually hold on to A. There's enemy Benson still in there, and the enemy carrier is trying to hit our Benson this time. Obviously defensive AA. But you can see, this enemy Benson is spotted, and he's been spotted for quite a while. He's not dead yet. That's because none of us can really shoot him. So yeah, I can say they're permanently spotting him, but what does that mean if no one can shoot him? And also, if he, you know, if his fleet is closer to him, I can't sit there and permanently spot him. In this case, I lose a lot of my planes to keep him permanently spotted, but I'm pulling another fighter over here, and the enemy's already attacked and failed his torpedo bomber drop, so our destroyer in there is fine. Plus, we hold the cap, so, you know, we have no real necessity to basically to defend him. If he gets hit, it doesn't matter. It's the enemy destroyer that gets hit that gets reset, not ours. So yeah, a lot of the aircraft carrier's job is information, and I've obtained some information from my team, and our opponent carrier has obtained some information for his team. Now at this point, as you can see, I'm parked on the southwestern area of the map. The enemy kutusov and armaki on the northeastern side of the map are gone, and their side on the western flank is also gone. I'm not spotting any of it. There are going to be times where the carrier is not going to be able to spot, and this comes down to this skill gap issue. There's the argument that, well, whoever has the more skilled carrier player is going to win. Well, if Omni is playing against random Bob Clan 1, who do you think is going to fucking win? Yeah, that's right. You're gonna expect the more experienced clan to win, regardless of what. Now, if of any clan can have, you take the best players available and stick them in the same team. If this team does not coordinate, they're still going to lose. But by introducing RNG into it, and a lot of luck into it, not necessarily just RNG, like the 1BB RNG argument that I've seen people bring up as well. Honestly, I don't mind that 1BB RNG as much, as long as you can have a carrier in there to basically allow RNG to be countered with individual skill. I can see from Wargaming's point of view that they want to have this there, because it basically promotes, if you want, it promotes, I guess you could say, game mode longevity by simply having more people able, you know, by having different games instead of games pretty much just being the same repeatedly because, well, one team or clan is good and you know, they have the strategy and therefore they don't lose. Like, was it Sun Tzu that said, you know, if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you're not going to lose. Something along the lines of that. Don't get me started on Chinese philosophy. I fuck the clue about it. Now, I don't mind losing as much, but I do, however, mind a situation where you simply can't do anything. And I do mind a passive gameplay scenario. And with Tier 8 competitive as it has been, there's been a lot of passive gameplay. Of course it's going to be, there's a lot of kutusovs there. And if you're introducing a lot of kutusovs into the world with a lot of smoke screens and long-range firepower, this is kind of where you have problems. So, well, okay, with the kutusovs gone at tier 10, with fewer smoke screens at tier 10, you don't really want to bring a Minotaur because they don't have HE, so therefore they're shit. I'm not even kidding. Like, sorry Minotaur, but if you don't have HE, you're horrible. You know, well, okay, at tier 10, everyone still has the range, and everyone still has the firepower, and everyone's got a lot of health, so, you know, if you're sitting at long range, merrily chipping away at each other, like 15 kilometers and farther, the firepower diminishes so much due to the armor. But if you're within 10 kilometers of each other, the firepower increases, not so much because of the lack of armor, but more so because of the increase in firepower. So if you do make a mistake at tier 10, you are going to get punished more for it, but if you make a mistake at tier 10, again, with 7v7, the more mistakes you make, the more you punish for it. So at tier 10, you still have the skill gap, but if you do start making mistakes, you are going to get punished for it, much more than tier 8, where, you know, stuff has so much less firepower despite also having less armor, but the firepower disparity across the different ranges and the way, you know, the different playstyles changes, whereas a kutusov is never going to have the alpha strike to simply whack down a battleship, whereas the battleships do have that. But at tier 10, the cruisers also get this AP firepower, if you want, to be able to smack down pretty much everything. Whereas the armor actually doesn't increase that much. You know, a Montana doesn't have that much stronger belt in terms of belt armor than the armor gear with its turtleback, you know. The Kurfürst that doesn't have that much better armor, well, compared to any of its other peers. Whereas the firepower has all of a sudden gone up drastically. So yeah. Now, with the spotting mechanism, which I still find very important, which, you know, without a CV you're going to lack, we would never have been this aggressive if we didn't have a CV. And you can say, oh, strangers, you're not being that aggressive. Well, we kind of are. I mean, we're in B, we're in the middle of the map. You know, we've captured C. Yeah, sure, the enemy has Navigi behind us, but for the most part, this is the enemy's map control. This is our map control. Don't care about this poor guy. He's going to die sometime soon. Whereas in the beginning, we had this, so our map control looked like this. Whereas the enemy map control looked like this. So nobody went into the middle of the map, because anyone that goes into the middle of the map just gets shot and farmed and killed. It sounds like it's kind of a silly idea to go into the middle of the map like that, doesn't it? And that's basically the thing. If you have ships that are able to sit there and smoke up all the time, then they're going, you know, or sit there and shoot, or deal lots of damage, you're never going to have aggressive gameplay. That's not an issue with a CV. Removing the CV is just going to exacerbate the issue, where if you have no information, you're not going to want to make a move against something, because if you don't have the information, you can't make a move on something even remotely safely. It's not even about being safe or not, it's about knowing whether or not a move should be made in even just a reasonably calculated fashion, rather than just going, alright, YOLO this, and hope you don't run into more enemies, and if you run into more enemies, cry wolf and die. Yeah. So that's my impression with it. So how can you deal with it? You can't, really. With the way the aircraft carriers work right now, and their ability to basically move in and get information, you can't really just solve the issue. The root core of the issue is still the way surface to air interact, air to surface interact, and in my opinion, the lack of a more detailed spotting mechanism. Now, I don't want to make a comparison to World of Tanks, but I'm going to. It's the closest kind of thing I can take, you know, the wargaming thing I can take. In World of Tanks, there's a percentage-based spotting mechanism. You can send a scout. At tier 10 that would just be batch chats, because fuck tier 10 lights, am I right? But you take a scout, be this a batch chat or a AMX 13105 or a T100L, well, what the fuck? You take quote-unquote a scout. You take an equal enemy scout, the exact same vehicle with the exact same camouflage, you know, same skill, same setup, so his performance is the exact same. If they're in the open, they're going to spot each other just the same as a Benson running into Benson or Gearing running into a Gearing. But if one of them suddenly introduces bush, then the guy in the bush is going to spot the guy outside the bush before the guy outside the bush spots the guy in the bush. Now, there's still information in this, even though there's no plane. You know, I can't just send a plane over to the island, for example. Like, if you're near an island, you gain a camo bonus. I can't just send a plane over there and spot him in World of Tanks. But there's still a lot of ways to figure out where the enemy is, whereas that simply doesn't exist in World of Warships. In World of Warships, you can't really hide. Like, you can't just go, alright, I'm gonna sit behind this island. You know, it's very binary. You know, it's, okay, I'm sitting behind this island. Well, I'm stuck behind this island. If a plane spots me, they know exactly where I am. If I shoot, they know exactly where I am. If I put a smoke screen, well, bloody hell, they know exactly where you are. So yeah. At tier 10, you're basically removing a large portion of utility, whereas the striking power is, let's face it, a much less than a battleship. A battleship still is always going to have much more striking power in a competitive scene, on the simple basis of everyone's got fucking anti-aircraft. At tier 10, everyone has AA. There's no ship that, you know, okay, minus destroyers, but, you know, you're not taking cargoes into tier 8 competitive and expecting them to deal with planes either, are you? I mean, you could take Hardicasser with 10cm guns, and, you know, the AA ain't bad, and you still have okay torps. They kind of do potato for damage, but hey, at tier 10, no cruiser is really vulnerable to air attack. Not a single one. Not the Senjo. Not the Moskva. You know, none. Nicht. Nicht. Nada. Null. At tier 8, Charles Baguette, still vulnerable to carrier. You know, Otago, still vulnerable to carrier. Doesn't exist at tier 10. So yeah, I don't really like the idea of having a 0CV mode. Because the biggest issue I had with tier 8 competitive, and its rather slowness of its play, was simply the amount of smoke screens. But that's kind of going to go away. If you suddenly start having smokes that can be countered by surface, instead of just a radar which goes through, you know, 2 islands, and playing through 2 islands, a massive mountain, and yeah, 11.7 kilometers away, comrade, you're spotted. But with the proposed smoke changes actually becoming a reality, and I'm really glad Wargaming listened to me in one thing at least. But with that being a reality, I think gameplay could become a lot more fluid, even with the CV, but that's kind of going away at tier 10. And the one consistent thing we've noticed when things start getting ranged in firepower is, well, when things start getting ranged in firepower, people bloody damn right use it. So a tier 8, where range is a lot more of a luxury than it is a tier 10, and especially firepower range, like a Kutusov shooting at you at long range isn't going to do too much. A Moskva shooting at you at long range, if you broadside at the wrong time, you're getting hammered. Yeah, I hope this talk made some sense. I'm not one for ranting. I mean, this was basically a rant in a way. I'm not one for flaming rants, I guess you can say. But hey, hope you guys enjoyed it at least. And I shall probably not catch you later. I've resigned my role as a super desk coordinator, so I'll be having a lot less active of a say in the way I think things should go, because I simply just can't be asked right now, especially after this big slap in the face with the tier 10 no CV. Anyways, take care. Hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you guys maybe some other fine day. Probably not.